Boom. And we are live. And we are live. That's just how it happens sometimes. If you're watching this later, you might want to fast forward to the intro. Gonna do the pre-show, let some people come in right now. If it's not your first time here, you know what has to happen now. I have to find the stream and post it to Twitter. I don't automate it, it's all real. Very hands-on human experience here at the studio. So you can't lose that human element. You know, I could probably automate it, but then what are we doing? Then we're just machines, aren't we? We're just automatons. I like to keep it real. I'm gonna find the TV emoji because we have time to put in the tweet. It's a little, again, a little human touch. Little, you know, it's little things. It's little things that we can't lose sight of here. Boom. TV emojis in. I'm not proofreading the tweet. I'm gonna send it. I'm gonna post the tweet on Telegram, and then we're good to go. Then that's all the tech stuff. Then we're just chilling. Nice. I see you guys in the chat. What's up? I'm just gonna swiftly copy the link. I also posted the show to Instagram. So if we get some weirdos from Instagram, we can bully them. The people that are here every week can bully the new people. And I'll just let it happen. Won't step in. Won't stand up for people that like my art. Just let it happen. I'm just kidding. Kind of. Whatever. I have no control over the chat. Anyway, how's it going, guys? Just looking around. Right when I start the show, I'm always looking around thinking like, oh, did I forget something? Did I miss something? Got my little ruler right here. Oh, wait. I don't even have the right screen up right now. Hold on one second. Let me just move the chat window. Boom. What's up, everybody? What's going on? Okay, moving the windows. Once I move this last one, I think we're good. Boom. All right, we'll hang for just a minute. And then we'll pull the trigger. What's going on with you guys? What's going on with me? Everything's been pretty cool here, honestly, man. Same story every week. Sometimes I come in and I'm like, oh my God, you guys are never going to guess. Here's the opening monologue. I met this guy and this other thing happened. But some weeks I'm just trucking along, and that's what's going on this week. I guess work-wise, I'm working on this calendar, and it's pretty insane. I did this whole calendar. This guy like commissioned me to do it, but it's also like a personal project, I guess. It's kind of like both. And it's pretty awesome. It's kind of like a traditional like Catholic calendar, so it's broken up into like all the different seasons and stuff. I've been like posting the progress on Patreon. But it's cool because I took all this time and I had to get the info and lay it out, and it's like a wheel. You know, you can imagine a calendar being somewhat wheel-like, and it's broken up with the sections, and I have like Advent and Ordinary Time and Lent and Easter and all the times broken up. So I laid out the whole thing, and that was really tight. And I was like, all right, we got it, boom. And I was cooking that along with the book of collected comics that I've literally been like working on for like almost like a year now. But I was cooking them both at the same time, and I was like, all right, I got to pull the trigger. I remember I read this book a long time ago. It was some advice book from some like Hindu yogi person when I was really into that. And it said, you can do anything, but that means you can do anything. You can do any one thing. If you singularly totally focus your mind on one thing, you can do it. But if you like fracture that focus and try and do 100 different things, that's a totally different ballpark. So I said, okay, I got to pick one of these to get going. Wait, someone said the Telegram. It says video not available. But you guys are here. I can see you guys in the chat. I'm going to click this link and see what happens. Sorry, one sec. I just totally interrupted my killer story about a book I read about some Hindu guy like a really long time ago. Let me see. Let me see if I can just post the link directly. Yeah, we have a bunch of people here. It's obviously working. So I had to pull the trigger and decide if I was going to try and make the, hold on a second, let's see if this works. Boom, I'm posting the link. Now I got different platforms under my belt. Okay, let's see, I'm going to click the link and see if it works. Whoa, if you click a link in Telegram, sorry, normally I don't do tech stuff live on the air, but this guy just said that the link didn't work, so I just want to make sure it's working for other people. Cool, it's working, cool. All right, yeah, so I had to pull the trigger and decide which I was going to focus on. I decided to make the calendar happen because, like, you know, someone else is involved. He's like technically paying me to do it. So it's kind of interesting because, you know, it's a meta creative thing with art, but it's really interesting taking away at like a big project. I've noticed that with my workflow and everything, that if I sit down, a total paradox, total opposite to what I just said, but if I sit down and I'm working on a few things, at the end of the day I'm going to bed and it feels good. I'm like, oh, I painted that, you know, I got 10% done on that picture of, you know, blueberry muffins. I did the sketch of that saint, and I also drew a picture of, you know, Bomberman. That was cool. I had a good work day. Awesome. And I feel pretty good about it because it seems like 3 different little things, you know, you're moving them along. But no matter how much work I get done, if it's one thing, it never feels like enough, because you think about the whole day, you think about the whole last 2 or 3 days, and then you just look at this one thing and you're like, this is it. This is all I got done. No matter how good, you know, you could pound out like 100 days worth of work, but I feel like it's still just looking at that one thing and saying, this is the total culmination of my efforts for all those days and hours and everything. So I'm working on the calendar and it's taking forever, man, but it looks insane. I have all these like church details. So I actually got these images of, like, I was gonna say historical churches, but I guess they're just old churches really. Every church technically exists in the flow of history. And I pulled like actual details from them. And at first I thought, you know, this is kind of obsessive, you know, why am I doing this? But when I put it all together, it actually makes a huge difference. I've pulled out like little trim details, like little flowers, or the way the windows form, like when you have a triangle and there's like a design inside filling the triangle, and I'm porting them over into like details of the calendar, and it looks insane. But I've been at my desk for like 4 or 5 days now, and I got like half of a quarter done. What is that, an eighth of it? So I got to pick up the speed, but it looks pretty next level. I think people are going to freak out when it comes out. And then also it's funny because I'm sure some people here know, some people don't, but you know, I don't want to go into it because I don't have really a strong opinion on it, honestly. But you know, the Pope issued that letter. This might have been before the show last week or sometime over the last week. But the Pope issued that letter that was kind of ambiguously or not so ambiguously, depending on who you ask, kind of giving bishops the ability to maybe have people stop doing the Latin Mass. If you don't know what that is, maybe we can talk about it, but I'm not really the person to ask, honestly. But it's funny because the calendar is like kind of for the traditional Latin calendar. So it's funny because I guess that's all going to happen, and then probably right when it cements whether it was a big deal or not, that's when I'll be done with the calendar. So it's also funny, you try and pick a topic that, you know, you think would not be current eventsy, and then boom, the Pope makes a letter about the traditional Latin Mass. What are you going to do though? Any questions before we pull the trigger? I'm about to press the intro button. Am I still working on Tiny Bishop stuff? Yeah, I've been in and out of that, but I'm going to wrap up the calendar and the book and then see about what the next project is. I think the Tiny Bishop stuff is going to happen naturally because when I have this kid, I'm going to naturally, you know, want to do it. But I have some like coloring book pages and stuff. It's like really funny because it's like my normal vibe, but it's 100% turned up on the wholesome meter. So I have a picture of Tiny Bishop and he's like praying the rosary and there's like a caterpillar looking in the window. It's almost like disgustingly sweet, to be honest with you, but you know, kids need like wholesome imagery, I guess. All right, it's time. Let's just do this. It's 7:04. Right, let's do it. let's just jump right in. How you guys doing? I feel there's not that many people here. I didn't actually check the number, but it's not a big deal. It's actually kind of perfect, honestly. So if we want to talk about whatever we want, we can. Sometimes it's nice, you know, being like an internet person. Sometimes you want like you don't really want the attention, but I guess you kind of do, just to reflect on my own psychology. But also sometimes it's nice like to not have all the attention, you know. Sometimes I'll make a tweet, it'll get like 5 or 6 likes and a few people will comment, and I'm like, oh cool, I feel like it's just me and the crew. I don't know. It's kind of a paradox there, I guess. You want attention, but then when you don't get it, sometimes it's cool too. Anyway, I don't even know how many people are here. I'm just judging by the chat. I've actually never looked at it the whole time we've done the show because I don't care. Anyway, let's just jump right in. So some weeks, you guys have probably been here before, but some weeks, you know, I have a whole like, okay, let's hit this book. I got this page of notes. Let's hit this whole, but I kind of just want to jump into painting right now. We hit a lot of like information last week. It was almost like 20 or 30 minutes of just like me talking. So I want to just jump in. I guess a little intro just so we know what's on my mind. What we're starting out here with is I thought we hit a pretty solid topic. So I've still been going hard on Mormon stuff, 1800s Christian stuff, all that stuff. And it's been super interesting. I say it every week, but it's been way more interesting than I thought. And I've almost been using it as almost like an interrogator in a way, if that makes sense. I've almost been using it as a questioner for me, because looking at all these different ways of viewing the whole Christian system and revelation and scripture and everything, really literally everything, it naturally poses the question back to me of how I came to certain conclusions, or if I've even come to conclusions, or maybe I've thought about this or never thought about this. So it's been interesting having this whole topic in view, interrogating me basically and asking me what I think about these complex topics. Some of them I've thought about, like sin, the fall, the Garden of Eden, and things like that. And some of them things I haven't thought about. But one thing that kept coming up is Adam and humans and human generations, I guess you could say. I've been going really hard on the Mormon stuff. For example, this is just kind of funny, little detail here, but I ordered this book. I don't think I showed it. This is like one of the Mormon scriptures, I guess. Not I guess, it is. And I got it. It was like $2 or $3, and I said, $2 or $3, game over. Definitely picking this up right now. But you can see from how tiny, you know, the situation is here. It's like an absurdly tiny book. It's like see my finger? It's about like as big as my finger. And I opened it, and I was like, wow, I don't know if I can actually read hundreds and hundreds of pages at this tiny, tiny font. There's even pages where it's one of these books where like footnotes will sometimes take up a whole page. So there's even some pages where it's even smaller, the writing. So I was like, okay, I can't damage my eyes reading, you know, a 3 by 5 inch book. I guess this is like a reference book if you're going out to be a missionary or something, which obviously I'm not doing. So I ordered a large copy of it, and then the next day, the day after I ordered a large copy of it, I walked into this Goodwill with my wife, who likes looking at old clothes and things like that, and there was a large copy of it sitting right there on the shelf. And I said, great, I don't need 3 copies of this book, but now I have them, I guess. So if anyone comes to my house and wants one, they can get one, I guess. I also found this book that's pretty odd. I'm covering the sticker. It's not a big deal, but why not? It says, Discovering Christ in Genesis. It's some random book. I guess a priest wrote it from like 1 or 2 states over or something. And it's all about, exactly as you would guess, finding Christ in Genesis and in the Genesis account. I thought it would be useful for what we're doing right now, but it actually just kind of went over a few, like, I don't want to say typical, I don't want to like bash this guy's book, I didn't read the whole thing, but like more typical parallels between Adam and Christ, and I didn't want to get too theology heavy, so I didn't go too hard into that. But I thought we hit Adam as a painting figure right now, because something about the whole Mormon angle of focusing on, you know, who we descend from and blood lineage and what man is and where he comes from, and a lot of the different 1800s Christian systems have these weird sync-ups. Like when I was going into Seventh-day Adventist stuff, they say that Jesus and the Archangel Michael are the same person. I think Jehovah's Witnesses say the same thing. And then in Mormon stuff, Adam is the Ancient of Days, and Adam is also, I think, Archangel Michael. Don't take my word for it. I haven't like fully gone into it. But there was something about all these different figures, and I was like, you know, I never really thought about Archangel Michael and how he integrates in the larger system. I never really thought about Adam that much. We hit Moses one time on the show, And it was a similar thing with Moses. You know, he's there in the stories, you read about him, and you're like, yeah, Moses, I get it, he parted the seas and stuff. But I'd never really considered Moses as what he embodies, you know, theologically, and he's a prophet, and like, I never sort of thought about it more than you would in like a normal little kid Bible story, I guess is how I would say that. And I was thinking about Adam the same way. I was like, wow, you know, it is really interesting that the first man, and we all descend from him, and then of course the doctrines of inherited sin or inherited fallen nature all hinge obviously on Adam. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, man, you know, that would be a really interesting topic for a picture. So that's what we're going to do right now. And the real jump off point for this is I was reading something, and it said, there's no mortal that was more at the bridge between heaven and earth than Adam. I don't know if that's like really true or not, but I thought it was interesting. Just the idea that like, oh, in terms of mortal people, obviously Jesus would be more at that bridge, but he's not immortal. So in terms of all the mortal humans, the real true, let's say 100% only humans, Adam would be right at that cusp, you know, being made by God, but also being just a human. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought we would do that, do a picture based on that somehow. So that's kind of the jumping off point. And also atypically, I'm going to use a ballpoint pen just because I want to. We're working on a board again instead of paper. And another reason I thought Adam might be a good figure to go with is, I don't know exactly how we'll render him, or if we'll have, you know, the generations thing, everyone descending from Adam is sort of interesting to me. So I don't know if we'll have other figures like inside of him or maybe around him or something, but I thought maybe we'll do a little bit more of a controlled image. With the paper, it naturally lends itself to watercolor, big washes of color, colors bleeding into each other. But I thought that maybe we could do it a little bit differently and maybe just do it a little bit more controlled. This is a board. Last week we did another board painting, but I was still pumping a little bit of the chaos, a little bit of the, you know, chaotic element. And I thought it'd be interesting to see what happens if we take a small space. This is pretty small. You can see how big my hand is here, obviously. And just try and roll with that. Just see what happens. I'm also thinking I'm going to limit the palette that we're going to use also. We might need some browns, so I might say we're going to limit the palette and then grab some browns. But otherwise, I think it'd be interesting to just roll with some reds and blues. And actually, I am going to limit the palette. We'll grab one brown. We'll use one brown color. Maybe we'll use raw sienna or raw umber. This kind of jumped out to me. This is good. You know, Adam's made from the dust. I want to pump that a little bit, but I don't want to have every single color at my disposal. So we'll use that and whatever color this is. I'm just going to grab a random brown here. Basically, I had to choose the light ones and the dark ones. Yellow ochre. Not really technically a brown, but we'll roll with it. And I used to do paintings only with this like super tight style. Like I used to do paintings, all my paintings were about this size, an even smaller brush than this, way, way, way smaller actually. And I would sketch it out totally in pencil and then painstakingly go over every inch with the paint. That would not be very exciting to watch because it essentially boils down to paint by numbers. You have the whole thing sketched out in pencil and then you go over every inch with the colors. So maybe it would be cool to watch on time lapse, but not much beyond that. So we're gonna see if we can strike a little bit of a balance between winging it and having those controlled elements unfolding also. I guess there's a few questions we have to answer right off the bat because I did a picture, it was a sketch really, based around the resurrection recently. Sort of the same deal like I just said, you know, maybe what's interesting about theology, mysticism, all of that, is you stumble upon these ideas and you're like, well, I've heard that a million times, I've thought about it, but I never thought about it this way. And I hit the resurrection that way. I thought, wow, you know, what about the moment that someone gets resurrected? And I sketched this picture out of a guy standing up out of the ground. And as I was drawing it, it's interesting because I was thinking, you know, I want to show that he's dead, I guess, but he's being resurrected, so technically it really should be just a naked guy, right? But that's not very visually interesting if I just paint a guy and he's just all tan. I mean, that's not that exciting, really. So I split him down the middle, and I had half you could see his like bones and organs, and the other half you could see the skin. And I wasn't really so happy with that because It almost made him look like a zombie. I might have to go back and like tweak that somehow. So painting Adam, it's interesting because my intuition is to, you know, render him with like the bones and the ligaments and pump that like human element. But I don't know if we should take it in that direction. So we're going to have to just wing it together. The other thing is, I feel like I really like the idea of like the generations, because maybe the new thing that really hit me about Adam is that he is, in a way, like the father of all humanity. Not the father like God the Father, but the father like great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll get the figure out here. I'm not going to worry so much about like getting the legs and the arms and everything, you know, fit in the frame. If it goes out, it's not really a big deal. And maybe we'll get 1, 2 more people inside of him, like contained in, like he's containing, you know, the seed of all humanity, something like that. And we'll start with this lighter color. I also want to have enough room up top to portray, you know, heavens above and then dusty ground earth below at the bottom. And let's not go with the totally round head. We pretty much always go with the total round head. So we'll give him sort of chin when we come down. And if you were here last week, I used these acrylic paints, but what I didn't anticipate was that they're plastic. The acrylic paints are literally made of plastic, so they're very shiny, and they took a long time to dry, longer than I thought they would. So I thought that this week we'd go back to the gouache. I didn't realize that the chalky finish of it, I guess I forgot, the chalky finish of it because of the binder and the gouache, this kind of paint that I'm using right now, really makes it perfect for the painting show because it dries quickly and it dries without that like plasticky finish. And you can see this often happens as an illustrator, but we're going to land a little bit between drawing and painting. I do make that distinction. The analogy that I usually use with people, I think I'm just going to go straight down. I think we're just going to go straight down here. I'm not going to worry about rendering the arms. We'll make it a little bit graphic. So I'll move this one to shine there. Perfect. The way I explain the difference between drawing and painting to people, technically I would say, I don't know if this is really a technical thing or just something I cobbled together over time from other artists. But with painting, there we go. Perfect. Nice. This looks really dope already. You are communicating visual information via large areas of colors. If you think about Monet's water lilies or some kind of impressionist painting, what's telling you what you're looking at, the thing giving you visual information is large areas of color. But in drawing, what's giving you the visual information is lines. So you can imagine a Charlie Brown comic, it's lines telling you what's going on there. So here we're going to kind of bridge between the drawing and painting because we're using lines, but then I'm going to come back in with some color. I went to an art exhibition by Matisse once. Matisse is an impressionist painter. And I was looking at one of his paintings, and it was a lot of lines, but a lot of chunky areas of color, and I was standing there looking at it. And I said to my friend, wow, it's like drawing and painting at the same time. And this really old guy, who happened to be standing there, turned around, and he said, exactly. He said, it's drawing and painting at the same time. And he was really tickled I made that observation. I always think about that when I think about comparing the two. Anyway, I'm a little torn here because this silhouette is so dope. We really could just come in with one smaller one and one smaller one. It's going to make the composition a little strange because then the area of focus is going to trickle down and get really low. I'm tempted to go with one of the figures that I normally do with the arms and everything, but let's change it up. Let's change it up. Anytime I say something where it's what I normally do, I feel like we should change it up. I'm just going to go with the same kind of silhouette here. Perfect. And the other interesting thing is, so I've been hitting the scriptures a little bit. I've been working a lot, so what I've been doing is I got this book light, and I basically just get into bed, and then I just read as much as I can before I fall asleep. So I have this book light, and the other interesting thing is, you know, what's interesting about the sort of non-mainstream Christian systems, I've talked about it a little bit here, is that they just have like a tweaked view of everything, which, as I explained before, naturally makes me think about my views on things. And the most interesting thing about the Mormon stuff is, people probably know, but their main thing, I think, that makes it really different, in my opinion, is that God is more like a man. God is more man-like. Joseph Smith talks about like Christianity becoming creedal, and Brigham Young talks about it trying kind of like being more philosophical a little bit, I guess. So if I was to make a caricature of it, it would be a guy being like, yeah, I mean, God's kind of like a man. That's explicitly something Joseph Smith said. This is pretty cool. It's like silhouette coming in smaller and smaller. Should I just keep it going? Maybe I'll just paint one more at the bottom. And it's interesting because, so I'm reading Genesis. I said, okay, I'm going to just go through scriptures systematically. And I haven't gotten past like the first page of Genesis because I just keep cracking out about stuff in there. There's probably a lesson there. But I'm sitting there and it's sort of highlighting different things about it for me. Sometimes I talk about semiotics. There's an example in semiotics. This looks pretty tight. It's pretty cool. We could, if we really wanted to make it a fractal and it wasn't a picture like of Adam, I would come in and put the shoulder blades up here to imply that this is an infinite regress into like smaller and smaller people. But that would also defeat the purpose of the picture. Kind of. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll hint at that a little bit. Maybe I'll just come in with a little something up here and sort of hint at it. But okay. So now I got to make some decisions. I really don't want it to just be a straight portrait of like a man. Like I could just put in a face here. It's not very exciting to me. I was reading the Orthodox Study Bible with the Adam stuff, and one thing I thought that was interesting, it said that Adam was a full man. Don't quote me on this. I'm not going to use the right terms, but he was a full man because he had body, soul, and the grace of the Holy Spirit. It was talking about the moment that God breathes into Adam. There's a biblical parallel with John where once Jesus is resurrected, he breathes onto the disciples. And whoever wrote the commentary for the Orthodox Study Bible was saying, yeah, it's the breath of life, the Holy Spirit. And I was thinking that's interesting. He has a body, he has a spirit, he has the Holy Spirit, has a soul, and like sort of analyzing those different components. So I sort of want to see how much we can drive home that. So I'm just going to go for it and paint in some of like the internal elements. Maybe we're seeing through him, like seeing his humanity. And I'm going to change up the colors too. Red somehow feels very appropriate for Adam. Maybe it's like the blood. Red is really like the first color, in my opinion. I have nothing to base that on, but red feels like the first color. It feels like it has some sort of primacy over the other colors. And we could use this dark red, actually, that I never use. See, someone in the chat said, my favorite thing is the harrowing of hell, Limbo, where Christ met Adam. Son of man meeting his genetic father, but Adam meeting his creator, son of God. Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, so actually, kind of fits. You said his creator, right? Referencing Jesus. And the whole, I guess, angle I've been coming at with everything, it really reminds me of one of my favorite spaces to occupy intellectually. The space where I operate the most and feel the most at home is when you hit this node and you say, wow, I can't tell if this question I'm asking is like the dumbest question anyone's ever asked, or if this is a really intelligent question. Once you're in that zone, that is my jam. That's where I live and try and hang out all the time. And I thought, I thought of it because you said meeting his creator, Jesus, obviously. But it's interesting because one of those dumb questions that I asked myself and have sort of been building up the answers to is, when you read about God in the Old Testament, is it Jesus? Like, obviously. And I know, like, the technical answers about the Trinity and everything, but sometimes I'm reading it and that sort of kicks on in the back of my brain. I'm like, is this Jesus or God the Father or, like, both of them? And you just reminded me of it. Perfect. It also, I've been thinking about the, made in God's image aspect of it. That's pretty interesting also. There's some scriptural stuff about Jesus being the image of the invisible God, and then we are made in God's image, so some interesting stuff there. Okay. Focusing too much on what I'm saying right now. I like the skull in there. I think what we'll do, you know, so you just mentioned it, Christ and Adam. In some scenes of the crucifixion, there is Adam's skull underneath the crucifixion. So I think what we'll do, this will be cool actually, we'll put the bones in the outside figure, and then we'll put other stuff in the more inner figures. I mean, because Adam is, you know, I was reading some commentary before and it was talking about how sin and death entered the world via one man. Not the best legacy necessarily. So the skull makes people think of death, obviously. Throw this in here. Perfect. And I'm going to throw up a fade from the bottom also. So let's see. Maybe we'll kind of roll with like a primary color scheme situation here. But I also want to hit the made from the dust aspect. That's the other thing that really stood out to me when I was reading. That Adam's made from dust. Something about that, just the phrasing of it. You know, like he's not made from the nice brown dirt from Home Depot with all the nutrients. The dust. Something about the dust is just so, it's almost like derogatory. You know, it almost sounds negative in and of itself, like you're made from dust. So I think we'll get one of these like dusty pale brown colors, and I'll fade it up into like a yellow or a blue or something. Perfect. So we'll come in here. When you get with these browns with the white, you get these nice kind of like pale colors. This is pretty good for dust color. I could make it like straight up gray. Maybe I should. I'll add a little bit of blue. So when you want to dull colors, it's like an orangey yellow brown. So you go to the opposites on the color wheel. Orange, opposite is blue. Yellow, opposite is purple. Closest I have to a purpley blue is going to be this ultramarine. So I'll throw in a drop of this ultramarine. Just a teeny bit. Have you heard the theory about Cain and Abel being a story about hunter-gatherer societies being replaced by agricultural societies? Yeah, dude. Yeah, for sure. I don't really, you know, because my main commitment is that I don't know anything, I don't really latch on so hard to any one explanation of anything. So, you know, for me, it's not a separation for things to have been literal and symbolic and X, Y, and Z. You know, I don't really make a huge deal of it in my mind. You can see it's a little bit more gray. Maybe it looks kind of the same. You can see this one to this one. This is a little bit more gray. It's also on gray, so it's a little bit difficult to see. I'm just going to come up with the fade here while we're talking. What I'll do is I'll throw down a little bit of the color, and then we'll add another color, and we'll just build up this kind of like gradient that way. But yeah, I have heard that. In case people don't know, basically the idea is that Cain is by profession a farmer, right? By profession. And Abel, by profession, raises animals. Cain eventually kills Abel, so the idea is that you can symbolically read into that the displacement of the nomadic hunter animal-based societies by agriculture. I guess you could say it's like a metaphor for like the agricultural revolution or something. So yeah, I have heard that. That's the easiest way to remember, by the way, who killed who. When I was at the same thrift store where I got some of those books I just showed you, I picked up this box of Catholic trivia, and I was killing it. On the drive home, I had my wife asking me questions, and I was destroying in Catholic trivia in the car. And one of the questions was, what was Cain's profession? And that's how I remember it. I said, oh, well, Cain killed Abel, so therefore Cain must be the agricultural one because the agriculture displaced the hunter nomads and stuff. So yeah, I have heard that. I think it's pretty interesting. See, it's also hard to calibrate because this is so dark, this is so light, but the paint dries darker. In case you haven't watched every episode of the show, how could you not? That's because the binder in the paint is white and then it dries clear. So the paint naturally gets darker as it dries. As that white binder, the glue becomes clear, kind of like Elmer's glue. So you really have to trust what you're doing. Like for example, this is going to be a better example. So I'm throwing down, because there's more paint here, I'm throwing down this color, this white yellowy color, and I want it to get more yellow going up. So I can't really look at this and say, oh, well, I'll mix it. I have to just intellectually, almost like scientifically, take some of the yellow, add it in, and then just trust, well, I added more yellow, it's going to be a little more yellow, and then see what happens when it dries. So let's just come up here. Folk tradition claimed Golgotha is where Adam was buried as well. Yeah, I've heard that also, that it's literally, I think Golgotha literally means like the skull of Adam or something in some language. I'm not sure though. But yeah, I really love that motif, and I use it all the time. I put a skull at the bottom of my drawings all the time, and I tell myself it's the skull of Adam. Perfect. Anyway, yeah, and I've just been kind of parsing out like little cool things about scripture and kind of trying to decide my own, I don't want to say decide my own views on it. That makes it sound like I'm trying to like cement, Owen Cyclops has figured it out. I figured it out. Everyone get ready. It's really not like that. Just thinking about things. And I guess the real thing is all the times where God is described as a man and trying to decide, you know, what the vibe is with that. I mean, so I'm reading all this stuff. It's just funny because I'm reading all this stuff, you know. And then I break open Genesis, and literally the first thing it says, God's face moved upon the waters. And I've read that, you know, probably 100 times. But because I've been reading all this other stuff, I saw it in a different way. I was going to make this analogy. I talk about semiotics sometimes. Semiotics is the study of meaning and how we get meaning and how meaning is generated. Wow, I have to go way faster. Sorry, I thought this gradient would go way faster. So you can see with the small brush, you get the nice like texture, but I have to go faster, sorry. I guess we spent like 10 minutes getting things going. Anyway, though, so there's a classic example like in semiotics where there's a table, and on the table is a hammer, an ashtray, and a cup. Let's say a cup. Doesn't really matter what it is. And it's used as an example because basically the thought experiment is if someone broke into your house, you know, and you had to run to the table and you're trying to defend yourself, you're going to see the hammer. Maybe you'll make note of the ashtray. You're like, man, it's kind of heavy, I guess. And the cup, and you're not really going to make much of a note of that, right? But if it's the opposite, if, you know, let's say you're really thirsty and there's a faucet running, but you have nothing to drink out of, and you run to the table, you're going to see the cup. Maybe you'll notice the ashtray. You're like, man, I could drink out of that maybe. And then the hammer, you're not really going to make much of a note of. So the idea is like how we see things is conditional on us as well as the external situation. And that's obvious, I guess, but I just like that analogy. And I really felt that way when I was going back to reading because, like I said, I've read that first part in Genesis hundreds of times probably. And I just read it and I was like, God's face. Who has a face? That's interesting, you know? And I kept reading along further. And then you get to the part where Adam and Eve, you know, eat the apple, and it says they heard God walking through the garden. And I'm like, God walking through the garden. Who walks? That's interesting. And it's just like 1,000 little moments like that. And I looked up some commentary. It was from some random like evangelical website. Not to, you know, say something negative about evangelicals, but that just means that it could be literally anyone. It could be someone hyper intelligent, or it could be just some random guy. But I looked it up on some random, I just literally Googled, did God walk in the garden? Because normally I would pull up, you know, some legit commentary, but I thought I'll just see what the internet says. And it took me to this website. I was reading the explanations, and it said, yeah, well, you know, maybe God appeared as a cloud to them. And I'm sitting there like, do clouds walk? Am I an idiot? I'm like literally in my bathroom brushing my teeth. And I'm like, am I stupid? You know, do clouds walk? Not really. And just little things like that. I know there's like intelligent explanations, obviously, but it's just interesting seeing things differently because you have this guy in your ear, because I've just been reading all these Mormon books, who's like, yeah, it says that because God's kind of like a man. That's why it says that. It's actually very simple. It's super interesting. Okay. Nice. Got that kind of like dusty color into the yellow. Let's see, what should the middle guy be then? I guess the middle guy, we could like fully commit and have it be like bones and organs and stuff like that. I'm going to come in and paint in the rest of the bones over here. I'm just going to throw them in. It's a little, I should wait until it's dry, but I'm honestly just not going to. Every week I say that. I say, oh, I should wait, but I don't. For the middle guy, maybe we'll just have them be more and more you know, lifelike, more and more like normal people. Throw these ribs in here. And I can come back and throw the white of the ribs over. Normally I wouldn't mess with this kind of like wet into wet painting technique, but it's so much just more, it's more exciting. Honestly, since you guys are here watching me, we might as well experiment a little bit. I could just do straight like paint by numbers style, but I don't think anyone's really trying to watch that. Plus it would take like a really long time. Okay, for this middle guy, should we go organ style? Let's see. No one said anything. Okay, let's just go for it. And then we'll see if we'll shade up the skull or what we want to do. Actually, I'm just going to drag out some of the color. Said we wouldn't do too much wet into wet, but I'm just going to get a little bit of the flowing color out. Perfect. Perfect. It's also interesting digging in and parsing out. Oh, that looks dope with the red. Perfect. And parsing out, you know, exactly what XYZ means, exactly what all these different things mean. Like, it's one of my other things I really like about theology is, you know, you're reading, like, I was reading along before the show, actually, and it says, it was in Romans 5:12. It says, basically, to paraphrase, well, sin entered the world through one person, so it also left through one person, that person obviously being Jesus. And you dig into the commentary, and I found this commentary. It was actually from Origen, another very unpopular person. It's just how it is, sorry. Let's got this guy's brain in here. We'll throw in a few other organs and stuff. And I should have thrown on the background first. I'm going to put the background down while we're talking. And it says, well, you know, what I'm going to do, I do this sometimes in painting. We did the fade up to this color, and then I'm going to start the next fade with this color. It's kind of a nice way of doing it. And it says, well, didn't sin really... Actually, the way it specifically was phrased is Origen says, some people may object to this, noting that sin actually, technically, the first character to sin in the scripture is the snake, isn't it? Because the snake is the one who lies or attempts to mislead, which is a sin. So that's kind of interesting. You know, the first character to sin isn't really Adam, right? It's the snake. It's kind of weird. What do you make of that? I don't know. It's kind of interesting, though. I think Origen appeals to like this sort of natural order aspect of it, that you know, the man's in charge, so really he's the one who like sin entered the world through. But still, it's just little things like that where you're like, oh, that is interesting. I never thought about like that angle before. A little like, oh, did you ever think about this? Perfect. Also, naturally with Adam, you get the division of, you know, original sin and what that like really means. I was more familiar with the Catholic conception of original sin, which I think is the conception of original sin most people in America have, at least, where, you know, Adam sinned, and then basically, to dumb it down, the sin gets passed on, right? And now you kind of have it also, and then it just gets passed on genetically, right? But I'm fairly certain, I could be wrong, that in Orthodoxy it's different. In Orthodoxy, it's more of like a nature that's passed on instead of a guilt. I read some random father or something online that was saying, you know, justice doesn't entail holding someone else guilty for someone else's sin, so it's really more of like an inherited nature thing, you know. And I thought that was interesting also. I've been thinking about infant baptism and everything because naturally I am having an infant, so I've been thinking about, I mean, I'm going to get it baptized, obviously, but thinking about the logistics of, you know, why, what's the reasoning, the theological reasoning and everything. And it's funny because little things like that, they add up. You know, if you think that babies inherit this, you know, sinful guilt directly. I know Augustine talks about that a little bit. He talks about how even babies have this, like, I don't want to say corrupted nature and like put words in his mouth, but it kind of is like that. And that's pretty interesting. I think that's something a lot of like on the ground, say like normal people on the street have sort of like an issue with, you know. I think they find a lot of like the baby stuff ridiculous. not saying that I do. I'm going to get my kid baptized, obviously. All right. Let's pull out this red. It looks kind of nice with the red and the green. It's often colors that you don't really expect to be so nice mixing together. Nice. That's dope. This looks dope so far. Let's just keep the fades going. We'll start with this color on the bottom on this guy. And we'll kick this up into like a blue. Someone said the idea of God being a man reminds me of Jacob and the angel, but translations say he wrestled with God. Also, Jacob saying, I have seen God and lived. Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah, it's like there's all these little, like, cool little, I don't want to call them loopholes, because loopholes makes me sound like I'm trying to be like a Reddit atheist of like, but it says this, but also, it's not really like that. It's more like, you know, in places where there's apparent contradictions, I think that that's what leads to like a deeper understanding of things, put it that way. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's dealt with a lot and talks about like theosis and God's nature, because, you know, doesn't Moses see God also? But then it also says you can't see God and live. There's a lot of things like that. Like you're saying, Jacob wrestled with the angel. And then the angel is supposed to be like a theophany of Christ, right? It's supposed to be like a theophany, like a image of Christ, basically. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. It also makes me think of like I don't know, I mean, more and more I've just been thinking a lot about like God's nature, which is like in and of itself absurd, because yesterday, this is really funny. Yesterday I was going to bed and I was looking for that book light that I mentioned, and I looked all over my house and I was just thinking, man, I really just want to read this essay I printed out that's all about, you know, the nature of God, and I just want to read this essay about this topic that I like and go to bed, and like I can't find my book light, and I was getting really frustrated, and I was looking throughout the whole house, and then finally I found it after a really long time, and it was in my pocket. It was in the pocket of these clothes that I was wearing that I threw under my bed. And I'm just telling you because it's funny. So I was sitting there like, wow, I want to read about God's nature and like understand God's nature. But I literally just looked through my entire house for an object that was in my pocket. It's just sort of a comical illustration of like, why am I presuming that I'm ever going to understand anything about this if I can't even keep track of an item that was literally in my pocket? So it's sort of a funny illustration of, you know, sometimes how futile it feels trying to understand things beyond our comprehension. But yeah, I mean, there's a post going around on Twitter where someone said, you know, some like atheist account trying to be like, oh, guess what, Christians, you ever think about this? And it was like, yeah, well, if God thinks things should be a certain way and you pray and ask him to change it, isn't that kind of like blasphemous? Because you're basically saying God, you know, made the wrong decision and he should change it or something. And it was interesting because, I mean, I know like the technical answers to that and like all the sort of like rebuttals, but it was interesting because I've been thinking a lot about like the nature of God and God being inside or outside of time. And sometimes it does feel that way, you know? I feel like the philosophy and religion and like folk religion all like butting up in my brain, like sometimes it does feel kind of interesting, you know, like someone gets sick and you're like, oh, I'm going to pray for them. It's obviously a positive inclination. But then if I start to think about it a lot, I'm like, well, I mean, what am I saying then? Like, did God decide for this person to get sick? I mean, obviously not, right? Of course not. Like, you know, there's all these theories of like posted about theodicy and problem of evil, you know, it's not like God made this person sick. But then if you're playing like the accuser, it's a dangerous game to play, but if you're playing the accuser, it's like, well, but God did kind of set like the limit conditions on the universe. He did kind of set everything up, so it's not like he made this person sick, but at the same time, I mean, this person could have like not gotten sick, right? That is obviously the case, but that doesn't mean that X, Y, and Z, and then it could be for this person's benefit. And you know, also the fall, we had the fall, so nature is not really in its like normative state, and you just kind of get in this crazy network of thoughts about it. And I'm like, am I ever going to understand this? Am I ever going to be in a place where I'm like, oh, I get it, actually? Or am I just always going to be like, yeah, I'm like just a dust-made person trying to get through the garden. Who knows? Okay, so we threw down this. I really like this like fuzzy color on the outside. And I'm just gonna come through. Let's just kind of put in the organs on the second guy. Should I put it connected to the eyes? It's gonna make a big difference. We'll just kind of give him like little nubs coming down, and we'll let the viewer decide if it's like brainstem organs or what, kind of like coming down to the eyes. Maybe we'll paint in the white eyes. It will be pretty cool, actually. We'll put a tongue in there. I don't want it to look too much like a face, so I'm also going to have this coming up here, kind of connecting up to the brain. Yeah, that's cool. I guess we'll kind of have this become the lungs in the back. I want it to be a little transparent. We can get the red transparency. Perfect. Perfect. Come down a little bit here. Let's see. It's kind of tight, actually. It's kind of nice. The insinuation of shoulders above could be a reference to us being in God's image. And yes, Orthodox doesn't believe in substitutionary atonement. I'm not sure the exact position, but yeah. Yeah, the theosis stuff is also really interesting, man, because I don't know if people know about theosis. You should like check it out. That's pretty interesting too, because it almost feels like it flips the script sometimes in terms of what I think about why certain things happened in X, Y, and Z. It seems like I say this every time. I'm not going to say it every time I say something about theology, but I'm not qualified to advise anyone on anything like this, so don't listen to me about anything. But it really seems like some of the church fathers early on had more of a leaning on Jesus taking human form bridged the gap between man and God in a way that lets us kind of cross over that bridge in a special way, more so than when I pick up some of the Protestant books where it's purely like, you sinned, Jesus had to pay for it, that's why this happened. I'm not trying to make anyone sound stupid. I know it's like more complicated than that, but so that's pretty interesting because it sort of flips the script in a big way. I mean, I think it's Irenaeus or someone, but someone has I don't know if I don't think Irenaeus is technically like a church father even. Actually, I should have checked before the show, but I didn't. But he says something like that. He says something like, it's almost like God became man, so man may become God, or something like that. And it's just funny because I'm reading all the Joseph Smith Mormon stuff, and I'm like, whoa, did I get my books mixed up? Like, am I in like, Missouri, or am I in, Antioch right now? Okay, this is a little bit duller colors than I normally go with, but it's kind of cool. Normally, obviously, if you're here, I go with like 100% maximum punched up colors. I think it'll clear it up a little bit when I come in with the outlines. I'm going to come in with like a darker outline, especially for these characters in the front. Let's just roll with it. Let's see what happens. The whole point of the show is experimenting. And we got to decide what we're going to do. I'm going to throw the eyes in here, but I don't want them to read like character eyes, so we'll just kind of put them in, hint of them. Okay. What are we doing with these guys down here on the bottom? It's almost looks like this guy's wearing a shirt. Maybe he'll be like maybe that's us. Maybe he'll be like the actual being in person in time. Just because of the way the color's dried, it looks like he's wearing a shirt, so we'll just kind of roll with it. Cool. Come in here. It's not dark enough. Gotta get the eyes a little darker. Perfect. The lion eyes are so tight. Just implies like this overall like silence in a way that I really vibe out on. And then what? We got this person in here. What is this, like a baby or something? Maybe it is. Maybe it's like a baby. He has like the seed of the next person. Should we put like a little detail in here for this guy? Can't really tell. Maybe we'll put just like a little like divine spark, a little spark of consciousness on the crown of his forehead. Don't want it to look like too Hindu though, so I'm just gonna actually come up and put like some light on the top of his head. Perfect. The one dot just looked a little, no offense if any Hindu people are here, it's just not exactly what we were going for at this moment. I'll come fade this down a little bit. Perfect. Okay, we'll come in and outline that a little bit more. It looks pretty dope though, actually. Other things. I want to put some kind of aura around Adam. I'm a little torn. He's not a saint, so I don't want to put a straight up halo on him. I mean, I can do whatever I want, but I mean, we're trying to keep it a little bit legit. Honestly, I'm surprised, but I feel like the black would be so tight with this color scheme, so let's just go for it. It kind of makes sense because, you know, if it's like Adam coming down to like the later generations, before Adam, there's no humans, so it would make sense a little bit for it to be black. I know there's other things going on, like other divine things you could say, but we'll roll with the black. He's not created like ex nihilo, he's not created out of nothing, but the blackness just feels appropriate. And let's come through. Perfect. Great. Come around here. Otherwise, man, it's just been super interesting. It feels really good being reinvigorated with reading and figuring things out. Sometimes it feels a little stale. Not, you know, because of the topics or what I'm reading, just because of me. Sometimes it feels like... I always catch myself, honestly, being very candid here, but I always catch myself when I say, okay, it's a little stale, I gotta change it up. Because if I'm into a topic, I listen to YouTube videos about it or talks about it while I'm working, if it's a project that I don't need to be that kind of mentally focused on. And I always notice things have gotten a little stale when I start wanting to watch something about like video games or something random instead of, you know, the normal, more scholastic topics I hit. That's when I realize I'm like, okay, I got to refresh something, change it up, something like that. And it feels really good to be going so hard. It's like I have more questions than I have time to work with, which is good. I have like too much. I could sit down for like a week and just go over stuff right now and still not be totally satisfied. I'm going to see if we can get a fade from the black to the blue. Actually, I don't want to do that because I'm going to have the blue in the back as the heavens. We talked about like the bridge between the heavens and the earth. I don't know. Should we go for a fade here? Maybe it would be nice to have one thing that's not a fade at all. So I'm going to just throw the black paint down here. We'll just do a flat black. Nothing's really as powerful as the flat black. Nice. Spoon of Salty is here. Said, what's the painting? What's the deal? Came in late. It's okay, as long as you're here, man. We're making a picture of Adam with the idea of successive generations being descended from Adam, him kind of being like the father of humanity. So we have these other beings, these other humans sort of inside of him, like, I don't know, maybe foreshadowed or contained in him. It's a little bit ambiguous. Symbolically. It's the kind of deep kind of ambiguous, though. That's the nice thing about being a painter. If you're a writer, you know, you kind of have to explicate things, it feels like. If you're making a movie, sometimes you have to explicate things. But if you're a painter, you could be like, you know, if it's just you alone in the studio, you can say, yeah, I'm just going to put a pomegranate here. It just kind of looks cool. And then later people will see it and think, wow, so deep, the symbolism. I don't really do that. Everything I do is intentional. But sometimes you can leave things a little ambiguous. That is a dichotomy that I use analyzing different painters' work. Yeah, the black looks sick. Looks sick. Okay. I'll pick up on that dichotomy in a second, but I also want to pump the dust thing, man made from the dust. And in fact, when I was reading, I could be mistaken. I read through it pretty quickly before I started the show, honestly. But I did make note of the fact that I think in Genesis, it says that God formed Adam, and it describes that, and then it says he planted the Garden of Eden. I could be wrong about that. Don't freak out if I am. But I thought that was interesting either way, that there was this window for a second where man was made, but his place wasn't made yet. So I'm going to put this like dusty brown earth. And I noticed, this kind of stood out to me. It said, you know, there's a time on the earth, you know, before plants and stuff like that. I should pull it up right now, but I don't want to stop painting. But that vibe really stood out to me. It painted a very strong mental picture of just this like earth waiting, lying in wait. And also that quote that I mentioned at the beginning, that no mortal stood as much at the full nexus of heaven and earth as Adam, having like A, literally been in a garden with God, and then B, also being cast out from the garden, obviously. So I want to get that like full earth. It's dirt. Nothing's more earth than dirt, really. You know, even a garden is kind of heavenly, but if you got dirt, that's just straight up 100% pure earth, no heavenly nature. Feels like it anyway. And let's see if we can get a cool fade in the back. I'm going to do this a little bit quickly so it doesn't take a really long time. But let's see if we can get the fade from the brown into the blue. So I'm just going to have it come up in these tiers. So I'll have one or two more tiers of the brown and white. And then we'll pivot it over, perfect, to a blue. I could even leave some of the background color shining through. That is a power move. I don't know if I'm going to do it though. But let's see. This is looking pretty solid already. Let's see, anything else I want to say about Adam before we just kind of drift on to other topics? Not really. I mean, obviously it's kind of interesting that Adam was made to like tend the garden. It says specifically he was made to tend and keep the garden. You could probably read a lot into it, and people have that man was made like for a job, for like gardening, you know. It's kind of interesting. Let's see, maybe this will be the last tier. This dusty color, because I really want the heaven color, the blue, to just come down powerfully behind this. Let's see. I don't know if we're going to bridge it. If we're not going to bridge it, then I have to have them touching. But I really want the bridge. I really want it to fade cleanly from the earth to the heavens. I had that quote in my mind, and I was like, that's the quote. I'm fixating. We're locking it in. That's the quote for this week's show. So let's use this cobalt blue. This is a nice, like, bright blue. Someone said, I say someone, I don't know if I should read your names. I don't know. I'm, like, paranoid about stuff, so I always feel bad. Like, if someone's name is, like, Kyle Jackson, I'm like, hey, Kyle Jackson said. But I also feel rude saying someone said. It seems so impersonal, so just letting you know what it's like on this end. The life of Moses discusses the significance of Moses seeing God's back. To follow someone, you need to be behind them, i.e. facing into their back. Kind of obvious, but cool. Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, the theophanies are really, really fascinating. Moses has like 3 theophanies, right? That's the main thing I remember. He sees God's back. He sees up on the mountain. We're going to settle with this gray color between the brown and the blue. And I'm going to start making the bands a little bit shorter, because it would just be tight if we can get up into the totally full blue situation. Oh yeah, it's also interesting that Adam names the animals. That's something that I also never fully squared away with myself. I mean, it's just interesting, but doesn't it seem like God should name the animals? Like, what's the deal with that? That's an interesting one. I mean, there's no answer. It's not like in the back of the Bible it says, oh, here's the answer. Adam named them because X, Y, Z. But it is weird, right? It's interesting. Makes me think of... there's a dichotomy in like sacred languages. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to mention, the Adamic language. There's a dichotomy in sacred languages, I would say, where, or just languages in general. When I was really into Eastern stuff, you know, a lot of it is based on Sanskrit and has to do with Sanskrit. And Sanskrit is interesting because Sanskrit doesn't posit that the, you know, in terms of like Vedic philosophy, that means like old school Hindu basically. But it doesn't posit that the association between the names of things and their essence is arbitrary. Meaning that in English, you know, we call a lily, right? But whether you thought about it or not, in the back of your mind, I mean, you probably think it could be called anything, right? We could have called it something else and it would have been relatively arbitrary. Maybe there's an etymological reason. We call them lilies, but it's not like the name lily has to do with like the fundamental actual physical essence of the flower. But in Sanskrit, that is how it is. In Sanskrit, for example, a lotus is called pema, but they would say, partially because I think their philosophy is based on vibrations and sounds having to do with the physical essence of things, that it's not arbitrary. That when you call a lotus pema, it relates to the fundamental actual physical nature of the lotus. That it's not arbitrary. That there is something actually pema about it. And I thought about that when I was reading about Adam naming the animals because, I mean, what's the deal with that? Like, he either he knew what they were called, which is also weird. Like, actually, no, that can't be the case, because in the scripture it says, and whatever he called them, God accepted it or something. It says something like that. So it can't be that they already had names. He really actually truly was naming them. It wasn't like a test or something. So what then? Like, was he just making it up, just winging it? Or do the names have something fundamental to do with the actual essence of each animal? It's kind of interesting. And the other thing the Mormons got me thinking about, honestly, was the Adamic language. I don't know if it was the Mormons or some other weird group in the 1800s. Honestly, I don't remember. I say weird lovingly because obviously I'm a weird guy. But yeah, I was reading something and it started talking about what language Adam spoke, and that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh yeah, what language did Adam speak? It's one of those, like we were just talking about before, one of those weird questions where I never thought of it before. I thought that was pretty interesting. You know, was it like the pure language? I think some schools of thought have this like pure language that Adam was speaking with God. It's like the ultimate sort of key language, the first language or something. Obviously the Jews say it's Hebrew. That makes sense in their system. I don't know if there's some like old school Catholic traditionalists who would say it was Latin, but that would be a pretty solid hill to take, a pretty solid hill to defend there that Adam was speaking Latin with God in the Garden of Eden or something. Maybe some of them do think that. That would be cool. Okay, so this fade took a second, but I think it was totally worth it. The only surprise here is that we got the blue way up at the top. I really was kind of imagining more of like a earth to heaven, but I actually liked that it is this way, because he is on the earth and the heavens are way up there above him. Let's see, maybe I'll move the lamp a little bit. Move this a little bit. Perfect. There we go. Now we're talking. Okay, so let's see. We gotta start making some power moves. We laid it out, but now we gotta start making the power moves. Last week's episode was way too long. I don't have an issue with it. It's a good time for me, but just as a discipline, we should try and hone it in a little bit. So let's start making some power moves. I need a darker color. I said I'd restrict myself, but I'm not going to. I mean, it's my show, so I can do whatever I want. Because we need this burnt umber. That's really what we need right now. And I'm going to come through. I'm going to quickly throw down some lines in the front. I don't know if I'll regret it. It's so dark, but I think it's a good move. It's so dark. It's going to really change it up, but you know, let's be brave. We have to be brave people here. So I'm going to come in. I don't think I'm going to do the complete full outlines. Perfect. We'll do the partial outlines. So that means I'm going to come down here. Boom, just like that. We'll come up here with a partial outline like that. Almost like they're integrated in some way. Come down here like that. Perfect. This looks dope. We'll come around the back of the head. Get this guy's ear in here. And we'll come around over this way. Perfect. Perfect. Nice. You can see it's already kind of like popping out a little bit more. Otherwise, that's basically it. Study-wise, I've just been going really hard on the Mormon stuff, and it's been really cool for the reasons that I said. It's making me reflect back and think about certain topics in a new way. Mostly the fall. Think about the fall a lot. Obviously, we're painting a picture of Adam, so it's appropriate. But just, you know, like, what's the deal with the fall? Are we actually in this, like, fallen state? You know, why? What's the deal? And then I have, you know, this kid coming along, and that's kind of interesting, too. Because, you know, I don't know, maybe it's my misconception of it, but the fall, it's going to sound really stupid, just feels so negative. It feels so negative to be like, yep, welcome to the fallen world. Hello, my son. Welcome to the fallen world. It's going okay. We're working on it, but it used to be way better. Hope you have a pretty good time. And in case people don't know, kind of what I'm referencing also is in Mormonism, they have this idea that the fall like wasn't a bad thing. It was kind of like intentional to get us out of the garden so we could go on this journey of like soul development and stuff. Okay, so it's looking pretty tight right now. I'm gonna come back in and just kind of intuitively darken some things up. I feel like I'm gonna add an outline on this brain right here. Just come around here. It's the shadowy part of the brain. That looks tight. What I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm fighting it because I am okay with it, but something's got to happen in the skull. The skull is like the main picture place. Honestly, it would be pretty sick to put like a red cross in there. It would look really cool. We probably are going to do that, but since it's the first idea I had, maybe we should just wait a second. But I feel like that's probably what's going to happen. We'll come up here with the red. Perfect. I'm thinking about the background. I thought we put some plants and stuff back there, but I like how like dirty and stark it feels, honestly. I actually like it. I didn't think I would like it that much. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's just go for it. This is the no holding back portion of the show. I'm just going to throw in the cross. I'm going to throw it in red. I like blue up top because I think I remember in a liturgical chant, Adam being saved in the River Jordan by Christ's baptism. That's cool. Yeah, and it's funny too, I've been reading all this stuff about, you know, Christ's nature and the Christological heresies and what people thought about it. And okay, I'm just going to go for it. Boom, perfect. And then we'll do the vertical bar. Oh yeah. That looks sick. That looks epic. Okay. Wait, what was I going to do in the background? I'm going to throw in a few stars. I thought I had some idea for what to put back there. I guess I don't. Well, I'll put a little horizon. Oh yeah, Christ's baptism you were saying. Yeah, and part of that is like what the Gnostics say about, you know, oh, when Christ was baptized, that's really when XYZ happened. And a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say fixate, as though it's like illogical to do so, but there's a lot said about that moment. And when I walk around, I'm mostly familiar with this from like Italians. Italian people used to do this when I used to live around Italian people. But they have all these like Virgin Mary sculptures and stuff like that. And they have that here too, even though there's no Italians, unfortunately. And this guy has this sculpture of Christ being baptized in his front lawn. So it's funny because a few days, you know, I'd have like some talk on and they'd be talking about it, and then I'd pass that guy's house and I'd see it in his front lawn, Christ being baptized by John the Baptist. It's pretty cool. Okay, we'll throw down some stars right now. And then maybe we'll just throw down the border. Maybe we'll just throw down the border. I can't say. Perfect. Someone in the chat, they didn't tag me. If you don't tag me, I'm not going to see it. Just for the record, it's cool if you guys want to talk to each other. I mean, I like that actually. I encourage it. But I'm just not going to see it unless you tag me. But I see someone said, you ever see a negative halo in art? And yeah, pretty much the only time I've seen that is with Judas. There's some icon or something that gets posted on Twitter sometimes, but Judas is like walking away through a door and his halo is left there, like the negative halo is left floating and he like walked away from it. It's really cool. Perfect. Otherwise, the dark halo, I just like it, honestly. It looks really cool. I used to use it sometimes when I would do other stuff. So when I throw the stars in, just in general in pictures, I don't really actually do it randomly. Not that that would be possible, but I try and get like some kind of lateral motion going on. So we got the cosmos behind him, and then above in the heavens, I'm going to put the yellow stars. In a way, I guess subconsciously, I eventually started distinguishing between the black and white stars and the blue and yellow stars. When I was younger, I went to Ravenna. I don't know if that's how you say it if you're Italian, but I'm not Italian, I'm American. It's this place in Italy, and they have a lot of really awesome, it almost feels Byzantine, the art there. At the time, I wasn't so schooled in art history, so I didn't really know when it was from. You just kind of assume it's all from the Renaissance. And Ravenna is pretty noteworthy because of their mosaics. It's got to be like some of the best mosaics in the world. It's insane, honestly. And they also have one of my favorite churches there. I actually don't even remember the name of the church, but you walk inside, and it's like the most transporting place I've ever been in my life. Maybe I'll pull up a picture one day and post it on Twitter. But I wasn't even Christian then. It was a really long time ago. And right when I walked in, you just have this feeling of like, wow, this is crazy. And one thing that made a really big impression on me, that was pretty good. I don't want to overdo it. That was pretty solid. I wanted to get this motion between the yellow and blue stars. And yeah, one thing that made this impression on me is behind this church, you walk into this little room. I don't even know what it was. It must have been like a baptistry or something, but I didn't know about things like that at that time. And it's this tiny room. It's almost like as big as the room that I'm in right now. But the roof was dark blue with these gold stars set in. And the windows were, I don't know if they actually were, if they were just painted to be this way, but they were alabaster. It felt like it was like paper thin like alabaster, or like paper thin amber or something. So the windows were insane with this orange light coming through. And then the roof was this really low ultramarine blue with the yellow stars. And it just made a really big impression on me, honestly. It was really cool. And since then, I feel like in my pictures, I almost distinguish between the black and white stars and then the blue and yellow stars. It's like the white stars on the black. That's like literally the night sky, you know, in like a way that we perceive it. I don't want to say mundane, but like almost like a mundane sense. I'm gonna throw it on the border. We might be done here. It looks pretty awesome. Almost like a mundane sense, like in the sense of going out and looking up at the heavens. Man, I don't want to turn this over the wet paint, but I kind of feel like I have to. Let's see, I'm gonna move some things around really quick. Oh, this is perfect. And then the blue and yellow stars I use as more of like a vault of heaven kind of thing. Like that really is like the heavenly stars. So you can also see when you do the tiny brush, you can put the paint on totally evenly. But when you use the bigger brush, you have to accept these like imperfections in the drawing. It'll be cool, it'll be perfect for this picture actually, but that's part of why back in the day I would literally go over like a whole image just with a tiny brush. The brush sizes go down, so I don't even know what size this is. I was gonna guess it's a 6, but it's an 8. So the brush sizes go down and down. You have 8, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you have zeros. But then it goes even smaller than that, and you get double zero. And I used to use a double zero brush, and I would go over the whole painting, like a 9x12 board, with just the double zero brush. And eventually some hairs fall out, and it actually gets even better. It gets even smaller. So you have this like insanely tiny brush. It's actually really awesome. It's a good time in my life. Cool. The only thing that sucks is that they were like a cult painting, so I don't show them to anyone anymore. One time this guy hit me up, and he wrote this email. He said, Owen, like I'm not trying to be rude, like I don't want to be weird, but like I was going through your website, and you know, you have this painting of this cross, and it's really strange, and I just wanted to ask, like, what's your whole deal? Like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, I painted that like 10 years ago, and I literally just forgot it was on my website. I took it down. It wasn't anything too exciting, but you know, it's like things I wouldn't paint now, basically. Yeah, this golden yellow was such a good call, man. The border seals it, man. It's all about the border. It's all about the border. Gotta contain the image. Perfect. Cool. I think we might be good. Man, it looks sick with the gold on the outside. Let's take a look. Honestly, I think we're good. I thought we'd have to do more down here. Oh, I see Lev in the chat. What's up? Everyone check out Lev's show. Lev runs a show called Break the Rules that I was on a few times. It's a really good time. Anyway, so yeah, I think we're pretty good. I'm gonna move the background and everything if I decide that we're good here, but I thought we'd have to do more down here at the bottom. But the thing is, if I put more details down here, it's gonna start drawing the attention here. And I like that this feels like the focus up top. So I think we're good, actually. I think we're good. Let's see how it looks without this painty background and everything. 1 second. I'm gonna move the brush. I'm gonna move this. Let's see how we did, if we were victorious in our quest. I think we were though. Nice. Probably change the white balance of the camera. I'm actually gonna grab another piece of paper just so the white balance of the camera doesn't change. That's like the most annoying part of being a painter in digital world, is that you're really obsessive about color. There we go. See, look at that. It looks totally different. Perfect. Nice. Nice. Perfect. Cool. All right, I'm going to look away for a second just to see if we're done, but I think we are. Let's see anything else in the chat. Oh yeah, Lev said, had a great talk with Uber Boyo today. Can't wait to talk with you on Nietzsche in the fall. Yeah, it's funny actually. So I did this, people probably saw it. I don't know if everyone saw it, but I talked with the psychedelics guy. We talked about it on the show one time, and it was a really good time. And afterwards I was like, if anyone wants to like argue with me or anything like that, like, I'm down. And only one person stepped up, and it was this guy who's really into Nietzsche. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, that's the only person that stepped up. Kind of goes with the philosophy in a way if you think about it. So that's cool. Anyway, yeah, I think we're good here, man. Like I always say at the end, I always feel like we need to like recap, but you were just here the whole time. But this one feels really good. I really think that this kind of direction is where I might push things a little bit for the show. If you've been here, you know that we've been doing like these massive, like wet, messy, not messy, it's never messy, I'm a professional, but more chaotic, bleeding colors and everything. And that's been really tight, but I felt like not that we hit a wall, but I was like, okay, we did that. There's a moment where, I'm setting up the show and I'm like, I feel like how much more ground do I have to pioneer here at this exact moment? So I feel like maybe this is the direction we'll take things in for a minute. Not that we'll do the same thing every week, but something about the board, it's way smaller. And I feel like we have a lot of like stylistic ground to push here. Like the fact that you can see the painting texture and see the color, the white coming up through the color, we can work with that a little bit. We could even build up like a little bit more texture. It'd be interesting to come over with the dry brush and everything. So I think this is the direction we're going to go in for a minute. Cool. Cool. All right. So I think we're going to wrap it up right now. That's it. That's the show. I'm looking at the time. Perfect timing. Thanks for coming through. It feels shorter, but it's the same amount of time. Maybe I was just really into it the whole time. That's the show this week. Thanks for coming through, talking about stuff. By the way, I wanted to say, I should have said this in the beginning, but like we go over different topics every week, and like one of the cool things about being online is some of you guys, all of you, know more than me about at least one or two things, right? So if you ever want to hit me up, like, if we do a show about Adam and you know some stuff that I don't know or didn't talk about and want to hit me up, like, you can do that. And I think that's kind of cool. I want to tap into that a little bit more. There was someone on my Telegram, maybe they're here right now, who sent me all this stuff about like Cyrillic writing and Russian stuff. And I was like, man, I'd love to harness the fact that we have all these smart, weird people together. I feel like sometime last year, I felt like what I was missing was new, weird stuff. And I found new pockets of it. But if I could just harness the potential of all the weirdos collectively digging up different things, we could change the whole world. So anyway, that's the show. Hope it was fun for you. It was really fun for me. I look forward to doing this every week, and I will catch you guys on the internet where we all hang out together. Enjoy the rest of your evening.